Those spoons. All right, when you hear the music, we're gonna get time to prepare. All right, so I'm on YouTube right now.
Good day and welcome to Momentum, a stewardship idea. This show is brought to you by The Faith Church, located at 2680 64th Avenue in East Oakland, California. The Faith Church believes that we should celebrate faith one day at a time. The purpose of Faith Church is to create a transformational and secure experience for all people. We want to reach people where they are because we know that everyone deserves the right to celebrate their lives. Go to our website at www.fbcoak.org. That's www.fbcoak.org. And be brought up to date on all our virtual activities. This show is also brought to you by the Faith Visionary Services, Inc. Established in 2000, the Faith Visionary Services, Inc. is a public benefit corporation. We are currently featuring the Georgia Otis Food Pantry and partnering with the Alameda County Community Food Bank. Named after one of the co-founders of this organization and partnering with the Alameda County Community Food Bank, we have our weekly giveaway at 2680 64th Avenue in Oakland, California. Our food giveaway begins every Wednesday at 8 a.m. and ends at 12 p.m. That's the Georgia Otis Food Pantry, first responders in a COVID-19 culture. And now our host, Curtis O. Robinson.
Hello to everyone out there in YouTube and Facebook land. My name is Curtis O. Robinson Sr., the senior pastor at the Faith Church here in Oakland, California, East Oakland, California. And I'm your guest for today's vidcast of Momentum, a Stewardship Idea. Again, I'm just so glad to have with me my vaunted and dynamic and just multi-talented, extraordinary, devastating, fierce Mr. Energy. The guy is the Hulk. The guy is glorious. He brings joy to the world. Jeffrey Healy. Hey, Jeffrey, how's it going, buddy?
God, I was trying to figure out who had taken my place. Always a pleasure in this great world of karma.
Yeah, great world of karma. And as you would say, it's what? Friday.
It's Friday.
You know it's Friday because you're on the show with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Now, am I salt or pepper?
No, I am salt and you are pepper.
Okay.
So salt and pepper. This is how we work it. We rock and we roll it just like this. I'm salt, he's pepper, right? So we're just glad to be here today. And we're glad to have with us a dynamic and talented young man that I met at the Westminster Presbyterian Church in Tiburon, California. I'm wearing his hat from his school, the Naval Academy. Is matching my shirt, I guess, and I'm waiting for my 7th Battalion shirt, Jeffrey. But I want to introduce to everyone my friend, my buddy, great guy, Mr. Phil Dillard. How are you doing today, Phil?
I'm great, Curtis. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Man, that's great, man. Fantastic. So Phil, just, man, take your time and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, gosh. I am entrepreneur, innovator here out in San Francisco. I live in San Francisco in North Beach, a wonderful village of North Beach. I've been in San Francisco for about 12 years. I started my career as a naval officer, then did an MBA in finance and strategy at Chicago Booth. My career in the Navy, I was at the Naval Academy, and really loved it there. Had a great time, great alumni out of there. Went to Chicago Booth for MBA finance and strategy. I did a lot of corporate strategy consulting, and after strategy consulting and running a corporate strategy group, being a managing director of corporate strategy at Charles Schwab, I followed my passion into being an entrepreneur. And I started up a couple companies and helped launch a couple of companies and incubators, and have been doing some work in lean innovation consulting and lean startup, teaching, coaching, consulting with organizations from two entrepreneurs in a room to Fortune 50 companies globally, and have been really been growing that work into the projects that I'm working on now around lean innovation and creating fourth sector companies in the social enterprise world. So that's a little bit about me.
Man, that is great. I wanted to go to the University of Chicago because that was the last place that Paul Tillich taught at. So he went from Harvard, right? And then he went to the University of Chicago, and that was the last school that he taught at. But Hyde Park, man, I'm still young. One day I might can get into a fellows program there or something like that. So great, man. So look, this is good to have you here. Jeffrey, why don't you start out with some questions?
Thank you. And I've had the great privilege of being friends of both of these gentlemen. So it's really fun to be on the broadcast with you both. I'll try to do less talking, more listening, because you guys are both great teachers. Frame a little bit of the discussion today. We saw what happened over the night regarding the presidential election, and I was looking up the definition of karma. And karma, it's what happens to a person happens because they caused it to happen to them. Mm. Now, there's a little Yiddish phrase, man tracht und Gott lacht, which is translated to man plans and God laughs. So, Phil, you have, I just want to talk for a minute. I want you to reveal a little bit about what role grit has played in your life. You've had plans, maybe something happened that made it really good, or something you hadn't expected to happen. Can you think of anything that has really been important in forming the Phil Dillard that's in front of us today?
Well, gee, grit, I think goes into so many different things. I thought you were going to go somewhere else with that karma comment. I was sweating a little bit, but grit goes into so many things. I think I learned a lot of it early. As you mentioned that, I was just thinking about different challenges that I've had throughout life that have made me stronger, I guess. And I think we were replete with those stories, right? We were, as an infant, I was ill early as a young child, and maybe fight for life, at a very, very young age. And I think it gave me a stronger constitution. As the youngest of three kids, I think I got sicknesses earlier because my parents just wanted to get them out of the way. So I have this really strong. Because I got all these sicknesses that my sisters got early on. As the first Black family in an all-white town, we got a lot of tough stuff thrown at us by people. And we learned to be resilient as a family. And we learned about the value of allies. There were like 3 Black families in a 50,000 person town. And all of our friends when I was growing up under 10, they all had Jewish names. And I didn't know why we knew so many Jewish people. I didn't even know anything about what Jews were, but we learned how allies protected us in tougher environments. There's so many different stories. When I started Boy Scouts at the youngest possible age, and I was like, wow, if I do all this stuff in a row, then I could be an Eagle Scout. And I was on track I did everything in the minimum amount of time. And then our troop folded. Now that was completely unexpected. And I didn't get back into another troop for a couple other years, where I could have been one of the youngest Eagle Scouts in the country. I mean, there are just so many different things that we learned from. I think we learned so much from adversity, and we learned so much from competition, and we learned so much from failure that for me, it's a reminder, right? Whenever I feel that there's being a challenge, whenever I feel fear to do something, whenever I feel like there's some risk, I remind myself of accomplishments that I've made before, or accomplishments that I've made before in generations of my family, or sacrifices that have been made, or things that folks in my community have done. And that grit to me is realizing that there's no courage without fear, and that you can leverage the lessons from the past to drive into something new and unknown, uh, create something new and unknown in the future. And that's actually what I thrive to do every day, to grow, to learn, to be resilient, and to hopefully make something great happen, and hopefully inspire some other people to come along and do something great themselves.
Okay, so for those in the audience, that question was not rehearsed. This is the real Phil Diller. Great job. Great job.
That's great, man. So Phil, one thing that I found out about you, it's marvelous, brother, is that, man, you're a great facilitator. You know how to just introspectively, get into the minds of a group, and probably individuals, right? You're almost like a therapist. I was about to say, after this thing, I'll just send you a check, right? So we can work some of these mental kinks out in my mind. But what type of projects? And I know we've talked, but just give us an idea of some of the projects, man, that you're working on.
Some of the projects that I'm working on. Sure. I like to frame this when I talk about my mission. And my mission right now is to build companies that solve UN Sustainable Development Goals in a way that's impactful, scalable, and profitable. That's my whole function in life right now, professionally. And how do I do that? Well, I break that into three categories, and I describe uh, allocating capital or funding activities, exploration activities, trying to explore what's new, and project management activities, trying to just execute on things. And really, that's you got to keep the lights on when you're doing things. Some of those other two things, because it can be tricky to get paid to invest and move capital, or to explore new companies. So the types of projects then are all aligned towards building the fourth sector economy, building social enterprise companies, and helping ones that are established grow, helping aspiring entrepreneurs to engage with them, helping corporations who actually want to explore how to get beyond ESG and to get this, sorry, environmental sustainable and I just forgot the G and G. Yeah, governance goals, targets for their corporation, but to go to UN Sustainable Development Goals. So I worked on a couple of different projects. Through one group is the iLab Collective, where we're working on building a corporate venture studio, helping corporations work with startups or build startups to solve problems in a certain area where they may have some interest or expertise. Another group I work with is, it's the company I founded called Global Minds Work Local. And at Global Minds Work Local, it's an incubation program. It's a program to create new companies that solve social enterprise, that solve local problems with emerging technology and with innovative processes that come from the lean innovation activity. We do it through university courses and lean workshops and that sort of thing. Another partner I'm working with is this company called Wiase Capital and the Wiase Research Institute. And this is a Black and veteran-led founded organization raising a $10 million venture fund to build modern social enterprise startups and B corporations, and work with nonprofits, very different major nonprofit organizations, where we want to take the lessons that the nonprofits learned from going out and doing interesting things in the world and see how to create social enterprises, to create transparent, funded, for-profit business that scale that solution from one location to multiple locations across the planet, really. So those are the major areas and the focus of business every day. And we wrap that in doing some messaging and some writing and some podcasting and consulting with different folks in the project management space to really be able to help folks build something new, and build new businesses. And I could talk about some of the projects, some of the project management execution projects like we're doing with some development in West Oakland. But that's where we get started.
So Phil, some companies are nonprofit by structure, some are nonprofit by execution.
Right.
They don't, they just don't know how to do it. How do you from your Booth School and Naval Academy training, how do you deliver the tough news to somebody that, sunken costs right now are just sunken? It's time to do something else.
Well, that's a really tough thing to figure out and tough news to deliver. And I think really uh, there are some tactical ways to doing that that we use in the lean innovation approach, right? And that's been very, very helpful, especially having been an entrepreneur who's been stuck in a project or in a company that it wasn't going to go to the next level, and that has failed. And I've been in and around and experienced success and failure firsthand, so it gives me empathy for that, for those folks. I think from the lean startup or the lean innovation parlance, we talk about this thing called the pivot, persevere, or kill decision. And that says, instead of making massive bets with tens, hundreds, thousands of dollars and years of time, let's roll all of that back and make these small iterative bets so that you're reviewing things every 2 weeks or every month or every quarter, and you're setting specific targets that you're going to move to. And if you go to those targets and you say, well, we've proved some of our current hypothesis, great, we persevere. If we've disproved some of our hypothesis, we have to pivot, which is a change in strategy, a change in direction without a change in strategy. We're still trying to accomplish the same thing, but we're doing something a different way. Or we get to the point where we go, we've invalidated enough hypotheses that we should really kill this thing. And that can sound horrible because somebody says, my baby is ugly, I've wasted my time, I've sunk my cost. But I think the messaging that I get from that sort of philosophy is that, the critical component before you have a repeatable, scalable business model, I'm going to steal this from Steve Blank, a startup is an organization that's operating in an area of high uncertainty, that's looking for a repeatable and scalable business model. Before you get there, only value you're really creating is learning. And if you've learned along the way through a couple different pivot, persevere, or kill decisions to a point that says, well, I should have killed this. I should kill this now. Well, you've saving yourself a lot of money, a lot of energy, and the only thing that we know that we're not going to get back any more of, and that's uncertain how much we've got, which is time. Right. So when I'm talking with entrepreneurs, we're like, look, let's save you your time. We want to accelerate their pace so they get to those decisions as quickly as possible, and they learn as much as possible in that time frame. So they take their lessons and they can pivot and adjust to something else. The more I've learned about being able to do that, the more I'm able to navigate towards a successful direction, and then have that conversation be something that's really productive and really insightful, as opposed to something that's painful or that has people feeling like they wasted their time. Does that make sense?
Mhm. It makes a lot of sense. It makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you, Jeff? Especially with the last piece, the pivot, persevere, and kill. It seems like if you do come out of that learning something, that's the intellectual components that will take you to the next level of your success.
Yep. It also helps the organization to move to another level. I'll share one story that comes to mind. When we were working with BMNT was this firm that I was working with, and I used to do the 1 year I did the annual summary of what we did every year, and one of the big stories there was how we did a workshop, and in 90 days helped the Air Force decide to kill something that saved them $500 million in spend.
Wow.
$500 million in 90 days, right? And they came out and said it. They're like, if we hadn't done this, we would have kept on going, and this would have failed a year and a half down the road. And it was a huge win for us. We didn't see any of that money, right? It wasn't the win. It was them realizing that there was a different way to do things, and that you could capture a ton of value out of finding a way to end a project that was going nowhere. And we've learned that we can apply these at companies government agencies, startups, academic environments, nonprofit, wherever. We've been there, we've done it, we've talked to them about it. The mindset change is a huge thing when you look at things in terms of learning as opposed to failure. When you learn how to fail fast, and it's not the end of the story.
Phil, you are a brilliant young man. Curtis and I spent a lot of time talking about the ethical dimension. And all three of us are, I know you two are, I try to be real practitioners of our faith. What role has your faith, and what role have ethics through your faith formed your life and what you're doing today?
Sure, that's a great question, and I think a central one right now. I start with my family. My mom was AME Zion Baptist out of Philadelphia. We're the American Methodist Episcopal Church, not Baptist. I know some people were like,
About to make me,
right?
about to make me clap my hands. Put your hands together. Come on.
Right. I didn't know AME Zion was born out of Philly, but yeah, my mom was part of that church.
Yeah, buddy.
Was raised Catholic, and we were christened in this church that we still watch the vidcast on Sunday of that same church in West Philly. And when you become Catholic, it's a much more different church experience than the AME experience, right? Mom, gospel, but we didn't hear that in church on Sunday. So I saw a little bit of both worlds, and I always had been a believer. I always been very hopeful, and I knew a lot about the history of the Black church in the African American experience. And then, I saw how those same values were carried out in the Boy Scouts, right? Those same values were lived in the military, and we went to church every Sunday. I sang in the Catholic choir and had friends in the Protestant choir, and we were in the Glee Club. We performed in churches of all types. And we even performed in Jewish ceremonies, and I learned a whole lot about religion in my teen years and in my early military years. And as I traveled around the world, and I met people of different cultures and different religions, I found for me a common thread through these different types of religions around the world. And I said to myself, if people have different language and different culture and look different, and how could then they have the same perspective on God, right? On religion. So I really casually started to kind of continue to explore a little bit about Buddhism, about Islam, about Hinduism. We had Hindus who live next door and Buddhists who live down the street in the neighborhood I was growing up with. And I just learned more and more about them. And I feel like there are common threads of God speaking to us through the divine, of which we're all a little piece. I found it was really well broken down in that book, Conversations of God. We are all the piece of the light and all the piece of the divine, and that politics and culture and history have changed some of our interpretations and not the messages. So I feel a lot of connection and empathy with lots of other different folks. I feel like it helps me to connect with people on a real fundamental level about religion itself, and for me to tap into those times where I feel really connected with a higher power, and to be able to allow that to guide me, and whether it's through prayer or meditation. I think those are both opportunities to tap into that higher power, because there's a certain unknown about how the spirit works and how it connects. And for me, I often go back to the simplest explanations or the simplest ways to apply those things. If Jesus said, if I go to my Christian Catholic background, I could say, if Jesus said, throw out all of these commandments, do as I have done, right? And treat others treat others in the way that I've done. Love your God and love your neighbor as yourself, right? Then treat others as you would like to be treated, or even better yet, as they would like to be treated because you would like to be treated that way. It makes it super simple. It makes it clear to me who Jesus would hang out with today. It makes it really clear to me when I should look at myself in the mirror and challenge my own behavior. I should recognize that I make mistakes and I have sin, and that other people do too, and other people are other places along their journey. So I use that to drive empathy, but I also use that to drive mission and focus and say, I want to create I want to bring the kingdom of heaven on earth by the actions that I do. I also use parable to guide my thinking, right? Like the parable of the
Mhm.
talents. People say, why do you work so hard? The parable of talents says different people are given different talents and we should use them to the best of our ability. It would be a sin for me not to go at the speed for which the creator made me and to pursue those things. If it doesn't work for you, then that's great. Everybody's got a space in this world, right? There are so many messages of 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 faith, of humility, of connection, of commonality that just span all these different religions. And whenever I don't know where to go, I think those lessons provide me guidance and provide me ability to be at peace that I'm doing the right thing, or knowledge that I'm not doing the right thing and I'm not making it up. I can find places and to study from it and people to study with about it.
That's great. You know, you know, you blew my mind, and you blew Jeff's ears off. Actually, you didn't see it doing it, but I saw that ear just hit the ground. You're talking about these generational gaps, right? And I was dripping some yellow stuff out of this one. You're talking about these generational gaps, and you were breaking down, to us, you know, the cultural, impression, from these gaps.
Yeah.
What are Gen X's looking for? Gen Z's looking for? Gen Y's, right? Uh, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think that one of the things that we want to do today is say that we can cover some of that. Let's go at that.
Sure. I'll start with, I think, probably one of the biggest reasons why I really try to do that. I remember a long time ago when my grandmother, I must have been like 12 years old. My grandmother, my dad's mother, said something to me that always stuck with me. She said, always have friends who are older than you, so you know where you're going. Friends who are younger than you, who remind you where you've been. Because most people just have friends who are about the same age. And I really always thought about that, and I've always tried to do that, to kind of keep myself there. Now, I also benefit from having youthful demeanor and energy, and also teaching. I think teaching has been a really, really big thing for me. So I've taught for 7 years as an adjunct professor at Golden Gate University. I support courses at Stanford with the Lean Launchpad for the past 3 years. I went to Cal. So I have students who are from their teens to, I've had students from their teens to their 60s. I have friends and coworkers, and being in the startup world keeps me with these young people, but being connected and respectful and engaged with folks who are older than me so that I can extract some of their wisdom. I'm seeking those relationships. I have an executive coach who's in her late 70s, right? So I have the benefit of connecting with a perspective across the different generations. I see the differences in the general trends between Gen Z, who I love. I feel like they're the heart of America, and they are chomping at the bit to do great things to change the planet, and we need to work with them and empower them and in accomplishing what they want to do. I understand the millennials who are like dealing with their boomer parents, and they're a big segment. Yeah, they're a big segment. They're there's this dichotomy of wanting labels and not wanting labels, of wanting to be seen and to not be pigeonholed. The Z's are very, very open and accepting to all sorts of things. Millennials a little bit differently. So I feel some of those differences between the groups, and I can kind of comment on some of the specifics of it. But I also have, like, as Gen X, you're really able to connect with them, right? It's like the middle child, right, or the cool uncle. And I'm not the dad, but I also found like I'm kind of interpreting a little bit between the millennial and the boomer, and it's not a. I think it's a great thing because it helps when somebody says, "Gosh, I don't really get how to talk to this person. What is it? What's going on here?" I love to be able to help people to communicate or help people to distill their thinking and get really focused and then achieve what it is they want to have. I think people want connection. People act out because they're not getting connection, because they're not getting seen, and I think each generation does that a little bit differently. Um, and I really want to help millennials have a great perspective of history, a perspective of the importance of the collective, that I feel like Gen Z has this strange natural affinity towards doing, which I don't think we don't see in any of their generations. They're so connected, but they're connected in a different way through technology than the millennials are. It was really, really very interesting.
So thank you, great insights, and I know, having learned from you, that you walk the talk, that you do it. There's a guy that wrote a couple of quotes that came to mind before we got on today, and one is either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. And the other quote was, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn."
Mm.
Do you know who the author of those were? Guy by the name of Ben Franklin.
But
What role does Ben Franklin play in your life, young man?
I was like, wait a minute, that's all Ben Franklin stuff. Yeah. So I was actually thinking about which one of those I like the best, or which one of those I try to emulate the best. But people who know me know that Ben Franklin is my favorite founding father. Being a son of Philadelphia myself, and my parents grew up in it, met there. My dad was born there. My sisters were born there. It's an interesting, unique place, and the stamp of Ben Franklin's been on there since he ran away from home as an indentured servant to his brother in Boston, and found his way there through New York. And I'm no scholar or historian of Ben Franklin, but I know enough of his story to be dangerous, and have been inspired from him as a kid at the Franklin Institute. I think it's part of the reason that I chose to study physics at the Naval Academy. I was enamored with science as a kid, and all the things that we learned and explored there were pretty amazing. As a guy who did a lot of different things, as a statesman, as an inventor, as a publisher, I see a lot of that in him, and the imprint on me. And 4.5 years ago, before the election started, I'm sorry, before that election cycle, and I saw that there was a whole lot of acrimony and people who were yelling at each other and not listening to each other. I went back to his autobiography and read about how he handled that time, and why they created the salons that he had in his home, where he brought in people from different perspectives and persuasions and had conversations. And I did the same thing in my home for 6 months prior to the election, and intermittently for the next 4 years after. And we've learned a whole lot from that. And I joke with some of the people that we're going to launch a movement or a party that we're calling the Ben Franklin Party. I think my roommate from college and I are going to write in on our ballots that we are Ben Franklin Party voters, because we see, okay, there then was a tough time. And I think a lot of people talk about founding fathers in absolutes, and they don't think they'll talk about the humans. There was some amazing stuff, but here's a guy who disowned one of his kids and sent the Tory back to England, right? I'm sure there's a lot of rough edges around. I like the fact that there is realness in him, and I like the fact that there is a willingness to engage with people, and the ability to tell amazing stories. I mean, Jeff, you told me one about some things he did in France that I didn't know about. I mean, everybody tells a different Ben Franklin story, and I think if we're going to look at our history, we have to look at all of it. We have to look at the things we did well and the things where we failed. We have to look at their strengths and their weaknesses, and tell a full picture of who they were, where they came from, and what they were able to do, and what mattered. And I like and resonate with the story. Um, I love my home city of Philly, in the region of South Jersey, but there's a reason I left. and there were some challenges that we had to deal with. And I won't paint over any of the tough stuff that happened in those different areas, but we still, it's back to that resilience, and it's back to that grit, right? And I aspire to emulate that in a lot of different ways.
Thank you.
That's great. That's great. That sounds fantastic. Hey, the Philly stuff is good. You actually are making Philly people look good right now. Actually polite. I've worked with people from Philadelphia, and I knew that they were Philadelphia by their behavior.
They let you know. They let you know.
Seriously, it's like, okay, in this boardroom, we will get down today.
But they'll be honest. One thing I love about the Philadelphia area, I forgot a lot about it when I went away. I went to the Naval Academy. I went on my first deployment, and I came back from my first deployment. I was like 23, and I was standing in a Wawa, and I had only remembered the rough things about the area, because people will get in your face and be direct, but people will give you the shirt off their back too. Because someone said, "Where are you in?" I was like, "Oh, I just came back from the Persian Gulf. I was deployed with whatever." I mean, there were like 4 or 5 people, and people stopped and were like, "Really? Well, welcome home. You got this, whatever. Get out of the way." Offer, and then asking all these questions. There's like, stop, phones down, whatever. Just asking questions, genuine, honest curiosity. That I forgot how much people were real and people were passionate back home for really caring about people once you got past the veneer of this tough Philly, we got to show how hard we are ness. And I really appreciate that about them.
That's good, man. Which is probably why you fit so well in Oakland.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Oakland for a little bit. You talked about lean capitalism, social enterprise, corporate venture studio. We've had a discussion about this before, because we believe that some of these things, they're going to have to be directed into areas that are neglected. So let's talk about that a little bit, Phil.
Sure, absolutely. One of the books I read was called Acres of Diamonds. One of the formational books I read was Acres of Diamonds. Short read, but it was talking about how to find opportunities just that were just lying out there in plain sight. And I think places like West Oakland are that, and not for the reasons that people might expect. Because folks who don't know West Oakland, it's that first BART stop. If you're going from San Francisco to Oakland, it's between downtown Oakland and downtown San Francisco, right by the port. And if you know the history of Oakland, there were racist policies, and I say that I'm very careful with my words, though, that push certain people in certain neighborhoods. And usually the poorest and the darkest people get pushed in those neighborhoods that are closest to pollution, that are closest to traffic, and it leads to a whole bunch of other things. And that's West Oakland, right? But it's very sunny. There's a lot of open spaces, and there are some old homes there, and it's really interesting space. I think that and I've gotten to know some people and some institutions there, and there's some great opportunities there. There's lots of people who just want to live a decent life, and there's lots of talented, smart people who just need opportunities to really live out their potential, to have the freedom, the access, the opportunity to make the most of their lives. And people aren't asking for anything more than that. But I also like to say, look, people talk about pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. People talk about the one that made it out as opposed to the thousands that didn't. And both of those things fail for me. There's no such thing as by pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, because first off, you got to have bootstraps. Some of them don't. And second off, if you do, that's a great way to land on your butt. Right? You need somebody to teach you how to put on your boots and tie up your boots and teach you how to go to work, so that then you can do it on your own, and you can grow and empower you, move some obstacles out of your way. When I was for a long time working with Civicor, I was a volunteer there, and then I was the chairman of the board at Civicor, which is a charter high school in West Oakland that helps kids from 17 to 26 get their high school diploma. It's not a GED. Get their high school diploma and job training. It's a nonprofit combined with social enterprise. Learned a lot with that experience. We had our ups and our downs and all this sort of stuff. But one of the things that impressed me, there was no lack of talent. There was no lack of intellect. There's no lack of drive or the ability to work hard. Most of those kids were there because of no fault of their own. They weren't troublemakers. They weren't bad kids, most of them. And I mean like 85, 90%. Some of them acted out. But why did they act out? Because they had an alcoholic parent, because they were divorced, because they were homeless, because they were immigrants and didn't have some resources, because they got pregnant, because they got in trouble. Those are there, and there's a bunch of reasons for those factors, but it wasn't an inherent lack of talent. Talent is distributed, maybe not evenly, but maybe there's a normal distribution, but talent is distributed. Access and opportunity is no. I was lucky enough to be born into an incredible family. We're not wealthy, but we have a wealth of love in our family. My parents met each other when they were kids, and they've been married for over 50 years, over 55 years, right? To grow up in a two-parent household, of anyone in America, anyone on the planet, you hit the lottery, right? So I could just as easily have been born as any one of those kids, right? And so I think we forget those sort of things. I think sometimes we don't take those things into account when we think about them. And I still remember this one kid. You guys know investment bankers and you know finance. This kid, I was talking about finance. I was talking about what banking is and investment banking and different things around numbers. And the aptitude this kid picked up with some certain things and concepts that I explained to him, I was like, man, you're better than me with this. I was at Charles Schwab. I was like, you have the talent to be able to be. I was like, you see that movie, the Secret of Happiness, with Will Smith? And he's like, Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. He said, yeah. I was like, you can be that guy. You have the natural gift to be that person. And his face lit up and he was surprised and I was shocked. And I said, pursue finance because you are a natural. And we're in the same room where there was another girl who was kind of, I don't want to say, she had lesser aspirations. She wanted to get her high school diploma and get some experience driving these trucks so she could be a bus driver. And her mom was a bus driver and her aunt was a bus driver, and that was great for her. And I was like, you know what? If that's where she is, great. She wants a job. She's gonna have some stability. She's gonna provide a service. That thing. They're in the same room. No lack of. There's nothing wrong. You meet people with where they are, where they're going, but there's incredible talent in West Oakland, and there's incredible opportunity. And I believe in what we're trying to build is the pathway to encourage each one of those kids, those young men and women, to be able to pursue that path. And when there's an opportunity for there to be an inflection point for them to be an entrepreneur, when someone says, I've been driving buses for 10 years, but I could just turn around and do this and launch my own business. I'm like, great. Let's have infrastructure that's available for you, that's driven by private dollars, that's driven by social enterprise, so we can open the doors and we can create the economic vehicle for everybody. So nobody has to live in a crappy neighborhood. It's not a zero-sum game. We can all grow together. There's so much abundance. There's acres of diamonds all out there.
That's fantastic. And so this conversation is about hooking, and this is true, and this is going to happen, about hooking East and West Oakland together.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because once I think in our community, I told my church at Bible study the other night, I was really serious about it. I said the key right now to the success that oppressed communities will have in this regime, in which we're under this particular empire right now at this particular time, is that we must come together. We must bulk up. We must join. We must put the pieces of the puzzle together, because that's the only time that you're going to have a complete picture. And guys like Jeff Healy, he understands that. We don't look at what's on the outside, right? We look at strictly what's going on internally,
Mm-hmm.
because what's going on internally is going to be a revelation of what you do on the outside. So I'm really cool with this conversation. Jeffrey, please.
Before you go there, one thing to add to that, agree with you 100%, 1,000%. People should know that now is the best time ever, realistically, to be thinking about how to do that, to be acting as entrepreneurs. Coming out of a crisis, great wealth is created. Great opportunity is created because of disruption. And the things that are going to happen when the PPP money runs out, when the budgets don't get filled because of the tax revenue that's lost over the last 6 to 9 months, It's going to create a great opportunity and a great vacuum. And if people who choose to step forward, we build an ecosystem for them. We build a platform for them to create unbelievable opportunities for wealth and community in the future.
One of the things that I
Thank
wanted
you.
to
Thank you.
just wanted to chat about for a second and get your opinion on. There's a guy that's been a pretty good money manager and for quite a long time named Warren Buffett. And one of the things that he said that was interesting to me was that the big difference between the successful and the very successful is that the very successful is willing to say no much more often.
Mm-hmm.
You can't wait forever, but when you're ready, make sure you're ready. And when you are, all in.
Oh,
All in.
Mm-hmm.
yep. Yep.
So how do we, a couple things come to mind, and Curtis and I have talked about this a lot. We have done some things together, and we're seeing great movements. The work you're involved in, Phil, is wonderful, especially in many different ways. The clean part of it, the renewable energy and the like. What Curtis and I are all about is how do we make these not green jobs, but green careers.
Yeah.
Sustainability.
Sustainability, and not just sustainability of the economy, sustainability of that job. How can some young man or woman go into this space knowing that this could be a multi-year opportunity for them? They might not be in the same job, but they're going to be in the same general area.
Yeah, that's a really interesting. There's so many ways to take that, right? I'll stick with West Oakland though and talk about a project that we're working on there that's aligned for that, right? Some of the folks that we worked with at Civic Corps and some of the folks we see out there, they're gonna work with their hands, right? They're gonna be contractors, right? And I've seen folks. I remember this one guy's name was Dick. He started his business on the side, laying concrete with a wheelbarrow that he'd rented, and grew it into a large construction company. And I've talked with a number of different developers and contractors who start at simple, humble beginnings. You never know where you're going to go when you start. But one thing we do know is that there is a transformation that's going to occur in the energy sector. It's already there. It's already happening, right? There are already more jobs in America for renewable energy than there are for fossil fuels energy. Period. Done. Right? True fact. I'm on the board of Clean Texas, the Clean Tech Energy Association in Texas, on the advisory board there, and working with folks around renewable energy projects here. The state of California just set a mandate of how they're going to go all EV. The only way you're going to go all EV is going to do a whole lot of energy infrastructure. We're leading a lot of the world on how to do that. That's going to happen. So people don't know where they're going to go, but you're going to need some skills. You need to understand solar. You're going to need to understand energy storage. You're going to need to understand how some of those things work and where someone could play. What do people do? How do they make them careers? Knowing yourself, thinking about how do you know what you're good at and what you're drawn to. And to do that, you got to say yes to some things, but you got to say no to some others. And sometimes you figure out how to say no after saying yes to the wrong things, right? And then you have a little pattern recognition and you go, that's the wrong direction for me. I think I should go that direction, right? One of the things I like to talk about with entrepreneurs is, like, we know that success is not a straight line, right? It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 2 or 3, right? But it's not a straight line. It's not linear. You're going into obstacles around and over and under. And if you're thinking about building green careers, let's think about where the trends are headed. Let's think about where their opportunities are going, and just know that there are people out there, for anybody who's looking in that direction, who want to see you succeed. I work with organizations that want veterans to be getting skilled in renewable energy and then launching jobs. We work with our program around that for contractors who want to build, but also want to learn the technology to interface with these different things. There are all these different ways to be sustainable. You could be learning about crypto, or we can learn about blockchain or cryptocurrencies or artificial intelligence, so that you can build sustainable technology that runs around the energy and the energy spaces. So I would encourage people to say, figure out who you are, test yourself to learn who you are, who you are not, as much as you can, and then think about the future. There are apprenticeship programs and nonprofit programs and other programs that are going to help people to figure out how to get into those careers. But you got to keep moving forward and not getting complacent, um, in order to figure out how you're going to have a career and not just a job.
Great. Thank you.
That's excellent. We got a few more minutes left. So let's just kind of do it like this. Phil, why don't you just give us like a good, closing soliloquy of something. Let me just say this, man. Like, I know this is hot because I'm feeling it, man.
Yeah.
I'm getting all itchy, under my skin, dude. When your heart start feeling warm, that feeling in the pit of your stomach. And I know something's happening right now, man. I know that paideia is going on. I know that serendipity, is charging ahead. And, we're actually doing something. And I love you, Jeff, and for being on here. You're my big brother. Well, actually, I'm bigger than him.
I'm older.
He's older. He used to try to fight me in the boardroom, Phil. Dude, he was like, we walking in, dude. But I know how he did, because Jeff would be at the office like at 5 in the morning, like 4:30 in the morning.
Yep.
And guess who'd be there watching them come in? Yours truly. I'd be like, oh, there's Healy going to his office. But anyway, man, great deal. So Phil, man, just give us a little piece, man. A little closing statement here.
Sure, right. If I were to close and try and put any sort of message out to people, gosh, what I want them to know. I think we're in uncharted territory right now. We're in unprecedented times. I think that the state of the world right now is, and we always feel like the world is, coming to an end, out of control. If you ever go back and read the newspapers, it always seems like the world is about to come apart. And I think there is a theory about this. I don't remember the name of the theory, but it basically says we get to the brink and we pull ourselves back. But I don't think we're pulled back by like some sort of random force. I don't think we're pulled back by luck. I think we're pulled back by people stepping up to help humanity move to another level. And I think now is the time for us to really step up and to move our society to another level. We have so many unprecedented things that are going on right now that are existential threats to the world as we know it. There really are. It is not as safe as people might think it is. It is not guaranteed. Look, a couple weeks ago, I looked out my window. I am fortunate enough to live in a nice part of town. I look out my window. I see Alcatraz. I see the bay. It's very calming and soothing. But for 2 of those days, it looked like Mars. It was brown and orange, and I had to keep the lights off inside my apartment to see for 2 whole days. I couldn't really go outside for more than a little bit of time for 2 whole weeks. We know that there are things that are happening in the environment. We know that there are challenges with the number of people on the planet. We know that there are challenges from the extractive industries. We know that there are plastics and trash in the ocean. We know that there are a whole bunch of challenges that we have around political unrest and people not believing and listening to each other. But here's the thing. We also know that the universe is so massive, that the nearest star, I don't know how far Alpha Centauri is away. It takes years for the light to get here from there. And we haven't found a single habitable planet anywhere else in between here and there. So we have a whole lot of incentive and imperative to take care of this one. We have it from our religious imperative. We have it for our own self-interest. We owe it to the generations. Hell, we owe it to ourselves to be able to walk outside. Now, wherever people stand on it, wherever they are on our political or other differences. We have to look some of our real challenges in the face, and we need to step up and lead them. We need to draw each other together, and we need all of us. If you're American and you say you're anti-China, whatever, well, you know what? There's 330 million of us, and there's a billion of them. You're not gonna beat China by beating down your countrymen or lose to that game. So any way you try and slice it, we have to be doing this together. And if you're living your values and your ethos, then you're no better than any other person. And it's your responsibility to them as a Christian to be acting like Jesus would with those other people who would take care of the planet, take care of their neighbor, take care of themselves. So part of the ethos behind Global Minds Work Local is to think about right outside your door. If you walk out right outside your door, there's a problem that you can solve that will help people all around the planet. I've seen it with my own eyes on every continent of the planet. I work with entrepreneurs on every one of them. And I saw a guy come up with a solution in the countryside of the Philippines. That was the same thing somebody was working on down the street in Silicon Valley. So walk outside your door, figure out who you are, figure out what you care about. Remember that we're all in it together. Remember, we're all a little bit racist. And if not us, who? If not now, when?
Awesome. Before Healy says goodbye, Phil, we have something for you. I think we do. Yes, we do.
Okay.
I'm getting better. Thank you, man. I can't get enough of you. Have you ever had this much applause?
Just a little bit. Just a little.
Just a little bit? You're awesome, dude. Looking forward to seeing you on edX or something like that.
I'll have to tell you a little bit about our pseudo-professional performances.
Yeah, that's cool.
You're great.
Go ahead. I got an editorial. Go ahead, Healy.
I just wanted to thank both of you guys. Every time I think I know a little bit about either one of you guys, I learned that there's a lot more, and it just keeps getting better. So thank you. Phil, on behalf of Curtis and me, thank you. Curtis, on behalf of Phil and me, thank you.
Thank you. And Phil and me, thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, thanks for being who you are, man.
And trust me, brother, hanging around you, it makes us sharp. I got an editorial. You guys want to hang out for just a few more minutes?
Sure.
All right. So I can make this work. In his essay, The Plight of Russian Jews, I read where Abraham Joshua Heschel said, the essence of a Jew is his involvement in the plight of other people, as God is involved. This is the secret of our legacy, that God is implied in the human situation, and man must be involved in it. The key takeaway from Heschel is the word human. What we have witnessed in this country is the most inhumane display of what God had never intended. God never intended for the world to see two of the most powerful men in the Western Hemisphere act like insolent adolescents. God has never intended for the world to dig deep into the earth, discover fossil fuel, scorch the earth, turn lakes and forests into wastelands, when all that we have to do is to look up into heaven and pull as much clean energy and use it. God never intended to see young Black men swing from the branches of trees so that people whose character is impotent cast fear upon the land. But God did intend for us to hear Billie Holiday sing a song that romanticized and criticized a culture that refuses to rid itself of its imperial oppression. God did intend for us to hear Abraham Lincoln say, government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. God did intend for us to hear Nelson Mandela say, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Our reality in the United States of America is that we are a spoiled child that is not afraid to hold its breath, even if it suffocates itself. From European barons, such as the Rothschilds, to modern day capital evangelists, such as J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon, the USA is ripped with the baggage of being the world's richest country, yet saddled with an eyesore of more than 1 million homeless children. And now, when we thought that we had seen the worst, the President of the United States of America, who defied the science, is now in quarantine along with his wife because he has tested positive for the COVID virus and still is trying to navigate the future of one of the greatest empires that the history of the world will ever know from his sickbed. Our resolution is simple: peace. The text says, and he got up and sternly rebuked the wind and said to the sea, hush, be still, muzzled. And the wind died down as if it had grown weary. And there was at once a great calm, a perfect peacefulness. The US does not need Proud Boys using their brand of peace because it does not work. The US does not need Black vigilantes walking up to law enforcement and shooting them in their cars. What we do need are people who have the ability to have a spiritual conversation with themselves that will call peace to still the waters that rage within. And once we are at peace with ourselves, we will be at peace with others. And for all of you who want peace, can find it now if we can unify as a country and pray for the President of the United States. Despite his stance on white supremacy, we can show the world that we are bigger than that because we have an opportunity, as Dr. King has suggested, to become the beloved community. And as James Baldwin put it, God gave Noah the rainbow sign. No more water, the fire next time. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. God bless you. God keep you. Thank you for hanging out with us today on Momentum, a stewardship idea. God bless you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us today on Momentum, a stewardship idea. We would like to thank our sponsors, the Faith Church and the Faith Visionary Services. If you live in East Oakland, California, please remember the Georgia Otis Food Bank, where we have our food giveaway every Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. That's the Georgia Otis Food Bank, every Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. The food giveaway is located in the parking lot of the Faith Church at 2680 64th Avenue. That is the Faith Church located at 2680 64th Avenue. If you would like to support this podcast financially, please visit us at www.fbcoak.org. That's www.fbcoak.org. Thank you for your time, and please join us again for our next episode of Momentum, a Stewardship Idea.